The 19 northern governors, under the auspices of the Northern States Governors Forum, have called for an immediate review of Nigeria's security strategies and the creation of state police. In a communique issued yesterday at the end of a meeting with the Northern Traditional Rulers Council in Kaduna, the governor stated that the demand has become necessary for greater efficiency in tackling the resurgence of Boko Haram activities in some parts of the north, killings by bandits in the northwest and north central, as well as a general insecurity across the country. This comes as Governor Uba Sani of Kaduna State sought to debunk fears that the governors will abuse state police, adding that the legal framework to be enacted by the National Assembly will restrict the power of state police to the fight against insecurity and criminality away from political cases. Now, for a breakdown of the demand by the Northern States Governors Forum, I'm now being joined by security and policy analyst, Dr. Kabir Adamu. Good to see you, Dr. Kabir Adamu, and thank you for joining us on this Live, the Sunday Talk Show.
My pleasure, Dr. Abati. Good evening.
Well, Dr. Adamu, you had the statement. Northern governors in the 19 states meeting yesterday with traditional rulers and reiterating the importance of state police, calling also for collaboration, calling also for inter-platform synergy, calling also on the National Assembly to provide the necessary framework, and commending President Tinubu for showing interest in this particular matter. Do you think that the state governors of the 19 northern states are actually sincere? It's not the first time governors of the north have been meeting. In 1959, they met about education and made a lot of promises. The education is a major problem in many parts of northern Nigeria. They've met like this so many times, no results. What do you think of the proposition and also of their sincerity?
I think it's a very good beginning. Like you rightly indicated, they've met severally in the past and have mentioned almost similar things like were mentioned in the communique. In addition, we've also seen instances in the past where they've made even stronger statements than this. But I think maybe we need to put this in some form of context so that the relevance of this meeting would be brought out more clearly. You recall that in April, at the time that the president traveled for work purposes to France and the United Kingdom, about 3 governors, 2 of whom are from the ruling party, spoke out against insecurity. The governors of Borno State, Benue, who are all APC members, and then I think Zamfara State also spoke out. So, who was, of course, from the opposition PDP. Now, the fact that governors, all of them from northern Nigeria, could speak out publicly like that, of course, would brought out this thing to the context that it is. Then let's not also forget the interview by Daniel Bwala, the presidential aide, in a sister channel, where he spoke about allegedly the security vote that is being given to governors. According to Daniel Bwala, it ranges between 1 billion to 3 billion naira. And he alleged that the governors would only give about 20 million in his words to these security agencies, and he doesn't know what they do with the rest. And went ahead to advise the governors to increase spending on this public security department and mentioned 2 areas. He recommended surveillance and security infrastructure in their states. In other words, calling on the governors to become more involved in security. Then the third element that is also important to our conversation is when the president returned, he also had a meeting with some of the security sector leadership. And then the National Security Advisor, in engagement with the media, told us that the president had told them enough is enough. And as part of the renewed strategy that the president had directed them, that we're going to see more engagement with the governors. So this is kind of the context within which this particular meeting was had. Now, from the side of the governors, as you know, I run a company called Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited. Every month for the past 2 to 3 years, when we release our report, what it shows clearly is that 80% to 90% of the security metrics, so whether it's fatalities, whether it's abduction, are domiciled in the northern part of the country. The 3 regions in the north, northeast, north central, and northwest are affected more. Between 80 to 90% of these occurrences occur in the northern part of the country. And then recently too, we've also seen an increase, as it were, in the activities of non-state armed groups in the northeast, in the northwest, and in the north central part of the country. So I think there is enormous pressure on the governors to perform. And this meeting, given the fact that it's a non-partisan meeting, we saw members of both the ruling party and the opposition party in that meeting. We also saw them bringing in traditional rulers. So to that extent, I'm very optimistic. However, like you, I'm worried. These are political statements. The things that would follow after this political statement, I think it's what would be really important. For each of the items in that communique, for each of them, there will be a series of what I can call key performance indicators, measures that would need to be implemented. So if we look at the issue of out-of-school children as an example, and the Al-Majri phenomenon and its contribution to insecurity, the current harsh economic environment and the effect, as it were, on the northern population and the mass movement of youth from the northern part of the country to the southern part of the country, and our borders that are porous, all of these things would have to be addressed squarely. I can spend the next 1 hour or 2 talking about each and every one of them, what I would call the drivers and the triggers of insecurity that are embedded in the 5 points that the governors have spoken about. So I'm hoping that beyond the political statement, over the next few months, we would see more action, as it were, in public security over the politics of it.
Okay, we've been on this issue of state police forever. During the 2014 National Conference, it was one of the major resolutions which was adopted. They talked about state police, border police, community policing, and all of that. Now, last year, all the 36 states said, oh, they also endorse, state police. Early this year, FCT, Federal Capital Territory, also joined them. But the key thing, arising from what the northern governors said, is that the National Assembly should provide a framework. Now, for this National Assembly to provide the enabling framework, it will mean constitutional amendment. Section 214, 215, 217, Section 218, which gives the president power of control. Beyond that, also, you have the police establishment saying, no, what we need is not state police. Do you see that there will be any political will in the life of this administration first term that there will be any result in this regard? Or people are just holding talks?
So if you pick up the Renewed Hope agenda, or the mandate, as it were, it was an agenda we've given our dear president the mandate at the moment. It speaks about police reform. And in that document, it speaks about the Rufai committee. And then, of course, mentioned that the report of that committee and several other reform imperatives will be brought together to achieve police reform. It was not very clear what components of that reform. And unfortunately, not many people outside the ruling party, APC, have seen that report. I haven't seen it. I've tried to lay my hands on it to see what it says. And as you are aware, the author of that report, the person who chaired that committee, is no longer within the ruling party. And so we're not sure what the current thinking of the administration is, given all the circumstances that has happened between it and El-Rufai. Would it want to still pursue the reform along the line of the recommendation of that committee or not? But having said that, the consensus at the moment at both the subnationals and at the federal level, I think, is one for decentralization of security. There is different ideas on how that decentralization can take place. Some of us have tried to form a distinction between policing as a role and then the institutions of police. As an example, at the federal level, you have the Nigerian Police Force, which is an institution of policing. Then you have several other institutions that are carrying out policing functions, including the road safety, including some of the anti-corruption agencies, name them. Sometimes even the military is carrying out policing functions in Nigeria. So we thought it would be very wise to make that distinction so that Nigerians are very clear that policing is essential. We cannot do without policing. But the institutions that have been created to achieve policing may be defective. Now, if we're going to recreate these defective institutions at the state level, then most of us experts are not in agreement that that's not what we need. But if the idea is to achieve improved public security using institutions that would achieve improved policing, then we are supportive of it. In other words, let's emphasize this idea of creation of institutions, but rather let's focus on having effective policing functions even at the state level. And if that is what the decentralization is, then I think that I've been fortunate to have engagements with the National Assembly, and I know they're very serious, they're very keen on moving forward with this idea. The challenge is to have the consensus on what exactly we would want to achieve. And we've tried, like I said, a lot of us experts are of the view that we should make that distinction between the function of policing and then the institutions of policing. I think that's where we are at the moment. So whatever framework the National Assembly comes up with, the Deputy Speaker of the House of Rep, as an example, I think is chairing one of the committees. And then, of course, the Deputy Senate President, too, is also chairing another committee. So we're not sure where all of that is. Remember, they've been on recess for a very long time. Now that they are back, I'm hoping that the momentum that was achieved before they went on recess will now see that type of momentum. The country needs improved public security. At the moment, public security is at a very low level, Dr. Abati. More than 1,000 people are killed every month in Nigeria. And one of the best things we can do to achieve improved public security is to decentralize policing. And we're hoping that that will be done very soon.
Okay. Decentralization, subsidiarity, federalism, these are some of the phrases that come up. But quickly, almost all the 19 northern governors, and even the ones in the south, they created what they call states or regional security outfits. They have local vigilante groups, to address the insecurity in their states. Now, this general call for state police, does it speak to the failure of such outfits and the vigilante groups? And why are those groups ineffective?
The groups are ineffective. They were set up to be ineffective. Let me put it like that. For the simple reason that at the moment, the constitution that we have only recognizes federal security arrangements. And yes, some state assemblies did back up the creation of this state-level structures with legislation. But then I think only a constitutional lawyer would probably clarify to us what that means. If the federal constitution says A, and then you now have state-level legislation that now contradicts kind of the federal constitution, which is where we are at the moment. But what we have seen in several locations is to now have a mandate for these state-level structures, mainly for intelligence, mainly. And in rare instances, they are given some form of weaponry that is really crude. But this is the challenge, Dr. Abati. The threat element that these state-level structures are dealing with are threat elements that have combat weapons that are almost the equivalent of what our military has. In most instances, these are automatic weapons, AK-47s, AK-49, or even higher than that. And then they come in their numbers. So in the case of the North, you have this threat element carrying 2 magazines, which is 60 rounds, And then you now have the other side, the state-level structures, having a rifle that at best would probably have 6 bullets in it. So imagine a situation where someone is holding a rifle with 6 bullets, and then the enemy is holding a rifle with 60 rounds that can go off within 30 seconds or 1 minute at most. So it's suicidal, actually, and that's why we've seen them being killed, like chickens, unfortunately, in some locations. So that's default number one. The second challenge with them is, with all sense of responsibility, I haven't seen any state where these state-level structures are representative of the dynamics, the kind of demographics that you have within the state. So in the northern part of the country, the Fulanis will complain that they are not represented in any of these state-level structures, even though, for instance, they are part of the threat element in that location. So they speak of targeted arrest, targeted killing in certain instances. In the southwest, it's the same thing. You hear complaints of lack of representation. I mean, I'm speaking of ethnicity now. Even the gender component is another challenge. You rarely see women in some of these arrangements. So these are some of the challenges. And of course, the training that they received. These trainings are usually hurried through with no quick understanding of the role that they are supposed to play. The fourth challenge is the lack of integration into the federal security structure. If they are meant to gather intelligence, then the kind of systems for analyzing that intelligence, for making sure the feed from that intelligence goes into the federal structure, because the response capability lies with the federal structures. So if the feed is not efficient, then it means the response time would be slow. And that is why a lot of times you see these threat elements attacking, and then we see very little response. The fifth point I would like to mention is their standard operating procedures, or the rules guiding their operations. Most times these rules are either not available, or even where they're not available, these elements do not really recognize them or even comply to them. And because there is no supervision or monitoring mechanism, the level of non-compliance is extremely huge. So you hear abuses being committed by them, a lot of times. And then, of course, the last point is the issue around their criminal use of the weapons that is being handed over to them. Because the training was defective and because there are no rules guiding the usage of those weapons, oftentimes we hear the criminal use of those weapons in several locations. So these are some of the reasons why the state-level structures have not been very effective. And of course, our current challenge with public security remains. And so the desire for state police is, of course, as palpable as it can be at any moment in time.
Okay, Dr. Adamu, as we begin to round off now, let me ask you, you were saying that these bandits, terrorists, oftentimes they have better military equipment than the Nigerian military. But the Minister of Defense a few days ago just said that that is not true, and that people should stop saying that terrorists, criminals, really, are better equipped than Nigerian military. Yeah, you seem to be contradicting him.
So I was comparing the bad guys with the state-level structures and not with the military. I agree with the Minister of Defense 100%. No non-state actor has the kind of weaponry at the disposal of our public security department. I mean, just using the air force as an example, as at today, Dr. Abati, no non-state armed group has a fighter jet. No non-state armed group has a drone that has the capability, apart from the contrived ones that we see in the Northeast, the capability for firing trajectories, as it were. Yes, they are contrapting weapons on them and using them to target our armed forces, but those are not conventional and ready-made drones or unmanned aerial vehicles for warfare. So I am of the view that the non-state actors do not have as much weapons as the state, especially the military. But earlier on, I was comparing the non-state actors with our state-level security structures and not the military. I am of the view that their weaponry is more superior than our state-level security structure. I hope my clarification is very clear. I don't want to be misquoted in this regard.
I get you. You are clear enough. And now, just before you go, the major concern is about the likely abuse of state police. Some people have said these northern governors, they are looking for state police so that if it materializes before 2027 election, they can use state police to abuse the process, to rig, because then maybe the amendment will have given them powers to control that apparatus. Although Professor Kemi Rotimi, who is a leading authority on police history, has said that where any governor who tries to abuse state police will only have himself to blame, because he can't be governor forever. What do you think? Briefly, quickly, as we wrap up.
Yeah, I mean, that concern is legit. I also share that view. Without the correct and appropriate mechanisms for checking the excesses, at the moment, the democratic tenets at the state level is extremely weak, Dr. Abati, and we all know this. Subnationals, the governors in particular, are extremely influential. They are able to do a lot at the state level. So unless we enhance the checks and balances that should be in a normal democratic setting at the state level, where the other arms of government are able to, to a large extent, check the excesses of these governors, then I think it will be, perhaps even dangerous to grant additional powers, as it were, to the governors. So I am hoping that the National Assembly, in the framework that it will come with, will have checklists and mechanisms to check the excesses of the governor. Several models have been put forward, and like I said, I was part of an engagement, and I know we looked at what subsists in the United States, we looked at what subsists in the UK, and in some African countries too that have decentralized policing. And so I'm hoping that the National Assembly would be patriotic, look at those models, tweak them a little bit to our context, but for as long as the democratic traditions, the tenets, remain as weak as they are at the subnational level, where the governor is able to influence to a larger extent activities in the legislature, where to an extent is able to influence the judiciary, then I think it will be extremely dangerous to hand over additional powers, especially the instrument of force to such governors. So again, we should tread carefully, make sure that that framework has enough checks in them to reduce abuses. Otherwise, what we'll be doing ourselves a disservice. I mean, one of the pointers that a lot of persons who speak on the process so far is, why is it that no state as yet has been able to build a custodial center, in spite of the fact that we have decentralized that aspect? When we're looking at security, let's not just look at the first component of security. If you create state police and those state police make arrests, are they going to put them in federal penitentiaries, federal custodial centers? No, they're going to put them in state-level penitentiaries. So if you've not built state-level penitentiaries, I mean, again, we need to be a little bit more careful and look at this thing holistically. When I spoke about the decentralization of security, this is kind of what I'm thinking about. The several layers of public security, we need to look at them carefully. If governors are reluctant to invest in custodial centers, they are reluctant to sign death warrants, why are they in a hurry, for instance, to have that instrument of force? So these are questions we need to discuss, and I'm hoping the National Assembly are looking at these issues.
Well, on that note, I would like to thank you very much, Dr. Kabir Adamu, for joining us on this Live, this Sunday Talk Show.